Hi everyone, welcome to the Experts Explorer, where we talk about everything employment from the facts, the myth, and everything in between. My name is Aisha.
And I'm Midday.
And on today's episode, we are going to be talking about something very interesting. We brought you some great tips.
That's right.
So we're going to be talking about 5 things you need to look out for before signing an employment contract. So Midday, how was your week?
My week. I had a bad day, but that's by the way. I also had a very fantastic day.
Oh,
I remember going to one of my partner's office, and he was like, he enjoys speaking with me.
oh
Yes, like he literally said, anytime I come to his office to have a conversation, he always enjoys that conversation. The last one we spent almost an hour, 30 minutes discussing
come on.
a whole lot.
Wow, that's nice.
Yes, we discussed a whole lot. We discussed at length. He was trying to talk about retention plans, why people are leaving and things like that. And I had to throw light. Thank God for our podcast. You know? See, I know. I tried to throw light on, some of the things the new generations are looking out for.
Yes.
Right? So if you've not actually watched the previous episode,
Yeah, this is a good time to do that.
this is a very good time to do that, because that was what we discussed, me and the partner, during our little session.
So like again, so I'm sure the last episode, like upon the research that we did from the last episode, it helped you to like have things to talk about and
Try
have
that.
things like
How was yours?
my week. It went by so fast. I wouldn't say it was too hectic. It was a bit hectic because something like some of my team members had to like travel, and we had to like plan it in such a short period of time. So that was a bit hectic. But other than that, my week was pretty much chill. So yeah, my week was good. Even though I always look forward to weekend sharp, but my week was not so bad.
No, this week felt small for me. This week I forgot to mention, I had 3 days training. So usually at my place of work, we go to the office, we work from the office Tuesday, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. This week was long, and it was long because I was working from the office Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday.
All 5 days.
Actually, Friday I got my day off, and it looks like next week I'll still be having sick.
Oh, sorry. I do like.
Thank you.
I work full remote, so in case I was.
She's all living in the trenches. Come on.
So yeah, now that was nice. That was nice. I mean, how was your whole week? So you can tell us in the comments.
Yes.
How your week
We look forward to hearing from you.
So as we said, we're going to be. I know when you hear employment contract, I don't hear employment contract like thank God I've gotten it. So let me just go and sign. So before you do that, I know the excitement is still high, the blood is still running. So you're like, oh my God. But before you do that, there are things that you need to look out for, and there are things that you need to make sure of and ask questions about, even if they are not there or they are not as they are supposed to be before you put your signature anywhere. So that's what we're going to be talking about. 5 things that you need to talk about. There are more, but we're just going to compress all them into 5 things. Yeah. So
before you continue, have you subscribed? Because it's a very important question. If you've not subscribed, please hit the subscribe button. Okay, you're doing both of us a favor. Do you know that? Because it means you not miss any of our interesting episodes. And guess what we've been doing lately? Been doing research, right? In-depth research to talk about or to get insight as to what is going on in the workspaces, home and abroad, in different sectors. And we're bringing it to this platform, talking about real life experiences, what will be beneficial to you. So tell me how you want to miss that. Why you want to miss that?
You really don't. So
More so, we even saw that about 50% of those that, more than 50% of those that watch our streams, right, and they don't subscribe, right? They just watch, comment, and then move on.
Some don't even comment.
Yeah, true. True.
I like.
Yes.
Because it's free. The subscription is free. The commenting is free. The liking is free. So let's do it. And by December, we want to reach at least 500 subscribers. So
Yes.
let's do this together. And you know,
do it
you are
together.
enjoying this. I know if you actually enjoying, just click on the subscribe button.
Exactly.
So, and also before we dive right into it, this is just a little disclaimer. We are not lawyers and we are not legal practitioners.
We are not.
We are not acting in their capacity. So we've seen our own fair share of employment contract, and we're just doing our own insights on the HR standpoint and what we think that you should look out for in an employment contract before you sign it. So that's just a disclaimer. Don't come and put us anywhere.
Yes.
We are not lawyers.
We are not subject matter experts.
We are not subject matter experts. So take it up with law experts. But for when it comes to employment contract, I know that we have good experience in that. So, and I think
so. You are not in shackles, right? At the end of the day, we want to make sure that before they bring the offer to you, you're already looking out for 5 top things. And if they are not on the contract, you request for them politely, right? So that you are not chained to some form of employment system, right? Or you get yourself involved in an employment system that makes you feel, that you've been in chains, in shackles.
So there's some employment that you feel like, am I, is this employment or is this slavery?
Exactly.
So that's like, so yeah, let's get right into it.
One important thing you need to look out for when you get a contract is the job description. The job description, just as the name implies, is what describes or what are the roles and responsibilities that you ought to do once you resume on that role, right? Once you resume into that responsibility or into that opportunity, right? There are some employers today that would not necessarily put the roles or the R&R in their contract or their offer to you. I feel that's not the best practice because you ought to know what you're stepping into. And even though not all job descriptions can accommodate your daily, routine or daily tasks, right? It's just expected for you to know what you'll be getting yourself into, right? Some even go the extra length of defining your KPIs, to help you understand the metrics at which you'll be measured, your performances will be measured by. And I feel that's an excellent way to drive a person's commitment on the job. This is
even clear. Exactly. Understand it as somebody that is taking up the role. So you know what's expected of you. You know what you're supposed to do at certain points. You know what they're going to be measuring on. So I think that's a very good practice.
Yes. I take for instance now, in some employment, the EA does not. They don't spell out the responsibilities for them. And that's why you get to see that sometimes an executive assistant is also acting in the role of an house help, as someone that is also a domestic staff. And it's not meant to be because naturally when you are employed there's so many things happening in the workspace, actually, because even EAs nowadays, they are the ones that will prepare tea. They are the ones, and even though it's an unspoken rule in some environments, I just feel they are not the ones to go and buy your food. They are not expected to do all those kind of things for you, all those domestic activities. An executive assistant, just as, even if it's a personal assistant, right? The responsibility of the person is to help you to make your job easy. Yes, to
plan your life, plan your every aspect of your job and
meet with your stakeholders, help you share the documents, everything professional, right? Or everything formal, but not. I remember one time, one of my friends, right? She was telling me that, her boss at the time used to tell her to go pick her children from school.
No,
I'm telling you. So she didn't stop at just doing the professional or the formal things. She was also diving into the domestic activities to the point that the children were even recognizing her as nanny. And even to some extent, she was the one doing the laundry.
What?
I'm telling you. Yeah, she was the one doing the laundry. She would go to all these laundromats, or sometimes you go to the house, you make sure that the children's school uniform and everything is taken care of.
Really ridiculous.
And it also, I mean, there's an extent to which, some organizations would define the job descriptions, but at the end of the day, they still don't stick by it.
Yes.
They will. So I really don't know, but I think it's better
if it's better, even if they don't stick to it, it's better you know that, this is what I'm supposed to be doing.
Mm-hmm.
So if they're not sticking to it, you can always advocate for yourself and ask questions. This is not part of my job description. For example, your job description doesn't state that, you do a certain kind of report and you're asked to do it. There are different things to maybe they want to add more responsibilities. Good practice, if you want to add more responsibilities, you want somebody to take on more things, it has to be it's coming with a form of promotion. You can't be saying that I'm adding to your responsibilities and it's just with mouth. So if something like that happens, and before you go into the company, into the organization, you have your job responsibilities drawn out and written out, you can easily say that, this is not part of what was stated in my contract, or can we discuss it, or can we come up a plan that works for both parties? So I think it's still very important that you take note of that. Then the number two is also it's very important to most people: salaries, deduction, and compensation. Everybody, I'm okay, I think when somebody gets a contract, that's the first thing I'm going to look at. Okay, what's the compensation like?
Yeah.
So it's very important that you look out for what your take home is, your deductions, everything is well spelled out. The breakdown is very clear and you understand it properly. The benefits are well stated, the monetary, even if it's not there are some benefits that are not maybe captured in the contract, but the important ones that are important to you and you want them to be to state it in your contract. Maybe somebody say, don't worry, you give HMO, but it's not in the contract. You can ask for it. You say you give HMO, then it's in the contract. You don't need to. There's no need to be going and keep talking about it. Even if there is a benefit that is not in the contract and you would like to have, you can always ask. There's no harm in asking. People always, especially in our community, people always shy away from asking questions. If you notice that there's a benefit or something doesn't seem clear to you, you can always reach out to the recruiter and say, this is what I saw, this is what I saw. Can I get more? Can you shed more light? Can I have this? I would like to have that. I would like to have that. Once you sign the contract, you've lost your leverage. It's before you sign the contract that you still have all the leverage. Because by the time they sign the contract, that means they want you. So you can always ask questions, ask for the things that you want. So checking out the compensation, the benefits, and all the salaries is very important. Ensure that you understand this perfectly. Ensure that the deductions that they are deducting is right. Ensure that what you are taking home is correspondent to what you discussed. That maybe when you are discussing salaries and compensation during the recruitment process. So what do you have to say?
Okay, so in my own opinion, right, once you get the contract offer, let me just say it that way, find out what is gross and find out what is the net.
Yeah.
Because take for instance, I think I've had my hand burnt before where I did not even confirm what the compensation was before I now resumed and packed all my things from Ibadan. And then I now moved to Lagos and then realized that what I discussed was different from what was offered.
Wow.
So it was a share case of what I ordered versus what I got.
You don't want to be in this.
You don't want to be in that mix. Trust me.
Yeah.
And so that's why I would always advise, let them see, there's nothing wrong with asking questions. I don't think there is anything such as a stupid question.
I agree.
Even though it is clearly stated that this is the net, ask again, will this net be deducted?
Mm-hmm.
Will you split the net into 4?
Mm-hmm.
Because there are some organizations that have funny structures.
Yeah.
I know some organizations pay their salaries maybe
twice
two times a month.
Yes.
Right? I remember someone that used to work in a bank, in a renowned bank, that told me that, in December, they are used to collecting salary 2 times. Or they collect salaries twice in December. And I know of another person that told me that they always collect salary, I think the first Monday in every month. Or
previous month.
I think second week in every month. That's when they collect their salary. So when people are saying, oh,
Salary
25th and all of that, they cannot relate. I think it's one of these banks that acquired another bank. I'm not going to say the name of it. I'm not going to say
We're not there.
But really, the person told me that they always pay at a particular time, and I could not relate. Know when you are paying the salary, know what the salary is. Because trust me, some people have very luxurious, benefits. You just look at the compensation structure and you see maybe 100 million there.
You'll be like, wow, I'm eating big.
But the time they now break it down
It's 500K that enter your account.
you now realize that maybe 80% of that 100 million is going into some investment, or it's going into an insurance that is covered for all employees, and once you leave, you no longer have it. Or maybe it's like a shares or a stock option, so just there's nothing wrong with clarify. I know it can be very exciting to see a job opportunity, and then because they give you the offer after series of interviews, and you've been praying to God to get the opportunity, and then when it finally lands the table, you are not asking questions, they are not trying to dot the I's and cross the T's. Trust me, you have your hand. Because later on you get to hear that, oh, some persons are even earning more than you. So I mean rather clarify, because money
is determines what we want. And we need to stop. We need to stop demonizing asking questions. Like, you can always ask questions. Me as a HR professional, if I send someone a contract and they just sign it, I'm like, you said I believe that it should have. I mean, it's very clear. You can understand it, but you should still clarify. Even if you understand it, just clarify. Like, okay, this is what it means. Does it mean this? Does it mean that? You should always have questions when you want to sign a contract. You don't just sign it like that. You don't do that. You should always have questions. No matter how little or no matter how minute the question is, you should always have a question before you sign a contract.
Let me even give you a story where there's actually an instance of the compensation structure that I've experienced. So in the structure, they have wardrobe allowance, they have car benefits, right? They have food allowance. The food allowance is separate from, so for those that are watching us and don't really understand what structure is, compensation structure is the elements of your pay slip or the element of your paycheck. So when they pay you, there are some things that are embedded in that payment. For instance, you could have your housing, your transport, and your basic allowance, right? Some would include utilities, some will include different benefits. Some might even want to include an additional allowance such as leave allowance. It could be paid as part of your monthly earnings, right? Because maybe if you didn't go for it, and even if you went on leave, you're entitled to some allowances. Do you get? So, but unfortunately, people don't really understand this element. So when they see a contract, they just get into signing it, and then once they sign it, they've gotten themselves changed already. So back to my chain of thoughts, right? I was saying that if you get a contract, you look at the various elements, because there are some persons that have all this wardrobe allowance, all these things just to beautify, the offer that they are giving to you. And you give it when you see the offer, I see that it's about 20 million, 2 million that is written there. And then because you accept the offer, at the end of the month, they now pay you some maybe chicken fees. And you now start asking questions about the payroll structure. I feel that would be medicine after death. Because you could have asked the question at the point of offer. Clarify, is there something you can get other than this? What if I've had some people say they don't want these benefits? Can you just make it salary?
Yes. Monetize it.
Can you monetize it?
Can always ask.
Some people that work remotely, they'll tell you they don't want to earn pension. Although it's a statutory payment, right? It is required. But in organizations where they have a minimum, they have about 5 employees, they are not required by law to actually pay pension. And because they are not required, they can decide to say, okay, since you don't want your pension, you can always convert it and start paying you as your basic allowance, right? So that's the little contribution I have.
You are very spot on. You are very spot on. Actually, like Mide said, even if they put net salary, they always still confirm how much enters my bank account at the end of every month. It's very, very important. So I've always studied that approach. So yeah, now we are on number 3, right?
Number 3, what you need to look out for is your work hours. Your work days, your work hours. According to the Nigerian labor law, you should be entitled to federal government holidays. At least. I remember a friend of mine telling me that in a place of employment, I think she's entitled to just 7 days in a year or 5 days in a year. Yes, to go on leave. And I'm like, that is slavery.
That's intense.
Honestly, how do you
365 days?
And they don't even go on public holidays. Like when people are screaming Happy Independence Day or Happy Merry Christmas, and all, she's still required to work on those dates. And I'm like, hey, you had better quit that job. I'm sorry. Because really, it shows that the employer does not really care about your well-being and you taking a break as a human being. I mean, that's the most decent thing you can do to give I understand that some industries.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, that there are some rules that require like 24 hours and like attendance. So for situations like that, there are things that employers can do. Yes, like my workplace, people that work like 24 hours, no break, not like they are the ones working 24 hours, but the service is required to go. Even though they run a shift system and work during public holidays, they are required to work. But those public holidays, they are paid for extra. They are paid for that day separate, okay, because we know that you're supposed to be on holiday, so we are going to pay you for that day separate, apart from like your salary that you're going to get.
What does the Nigerian labor law even say? The number of hours you're entitled to work in a month. Right. The labor law says that you are entitled or you are expected to work 8 hours in a day. That makes 40 hours a week. Mm-hmm. But employers now make it 48 because you're entitled to 1 hour break. Right?
True.
And that's why you get to see some employment systems that have 8 to 5 and some have 9 to 6. Right? That's because they've also included the 1 hour break. Any employer that is doing outside of that is actually going against the Nigerian labor law. And I think that has to be questioned. Other than that, please, when you get your contract, check the hours that you're expected to work. So even if you're going to work long hours, right, it should be clearly stated. I would not say that in quotes, right, some organizations do not expect you to work outside of those work hours. Right, it is expected sometimes because there are some, especially there in the consulting space, there are times where, because you're working for your clients, right? There are times where you need to close late. There are times where you'll be required to close late. And because you're closing late, it is only human for your supervisors or your leaders to give you some time off, to just recalibrate as a human being so that you don't shut down, right? So check that contract, ensure that it is clearly stated, and at that point where it has been stated, still also look for all those gray areas where they now say that sometimes you will, because we know how to put on
yeah, so even there's some workplaces that work like Monday to like Saturday.
Sure.
So you need to be clear how many days of the week am I working. Therefore, hybrid structures, remote structures, it needs to be clearly stated in your contract, not word of mouth. If the workplace saying that, it's just you can just do hybrid, or you can just do 2 days, or you can just do 3 days, let it be clearly stated. And you are required to work like 2 days out of the office and 3 days in the office. Not like they put there that, they don't put it there, then it's just based on vibes. Because if the contract is meant to protect you and the employer, so if everything is not clearly stated, how do you want to protect yourself? For example, if you discuss maybe during the recruitment process, you discuss that, okay, you're going to be doing hybrid structure. Then all of a sudden, it's not in your contract, then all of a sudden you come back and say, you have to start coming to the office 5 times in a week. 5 times in a week. How do you protect yourself? What do you do about that? There's nothing you can do. Well, there's something you can always leave. But
Well,
If it's not in your contract and they just say you have to start coming, how do you want to protect
I
yourself?
actually have a contrasted opinion about that. Because
Okay.
yes, whilst it is important for organizations to still be running a hybrid system or full of work, right? Some organizations might not be flexible enough to put it in the contract because it was COVID that made most people go to working remotely. Some people now start working one day from the office, other days from home.
And then it shouldn't be communicated as like, oh, this is what we do.
And
If
so-
it's like based on the company's discretion, like, oh, we're just trying to be accommodating, we're just trying to be nice, or we're just trying to make people have like good experience, we just try to have like good employee experience. Then it should be communicated that, oh, this is not part of a benefit, but this is not part of like the core benefit, but it's just like it's something on the side that we do. So in case they come back, you can't say, oh, they are allowing it, then what if they stop allowing it and you took the job because it's hybrid structure?
Every organization has certain benefits, and they can always pull out your data.
They can put, of course, but if you are not protected by your contract, how do you then protect yourself? Because if you go into, for example, I got into an employment because they told me that, oh, it's a hybrid structure and you're required to work 2 times two times in the office in a week, and that's part of the reason that I took the work, because I wanted that flexibility. All of a sudden, they come up one day and say, oh, you can't do that anymore. And if my contract says that, oh, I have to work like 2 times in the office, I can always say that, oh, so what are you doing differently to make me want to change this? How are we going to go about it that it favors me now? Because this was what was in my contract, and this was what I signed for. So you can't just say, I know that organizations can wake up one day and say, oh, they are not doing it again. But it's not supposed to be so. There should be a way that it should be compensated in some kind of way. Because you can't bring somebody in with the impression that, oh, this is what you're going to be doing. And then we go out of that and start saying, oh, no, this is not it.
And so
that's why it
was sold as one of the perks of joining the organization, then yes, it should be portrayed as a kind of offer.
Of course.
But if it was more like a practice, and you mentioned it that currently we are operating as a hybrid work environment, as a hybrid mode of work, right? I don't think it is necessary to actually put it in the contract.
You are saying the same thing.
Yes.
Because you are saying it like if it's not part of the core perks, but if it was sold to me as part of it during the maybe employment process, and that is the reason why I made the decision. Yes, because I wanted that flexibility. Then you can't now come one day and say, no, it's not like that anymore. But of course, there are workplaces that it's not like, oh, it's cast in stone. Like, it's just nice to have, and they see the situation of what's going on around, or maybe they're just trying to make work easy, and they're like, okay, this is the practice that we currently run. But it's not set in stone. They can come back one day and say, no, it's not like that again. And everybody would even though they will be dissatisfied, or it can be difficult for them to get back into, but everybody will go with the program, because this was not part of like the core perks that was sold to them in the first place. But at the point of offer, but if that was part of it and it's not in your contract and you want it, this is what I'm taking the offer. In essence, what I'm saying is, whatever it is that you are expecting and you're expecting to get should be clearly stated. If you are going into the role because of it's a hybrid structure or it's a remote structure, it should be clearly stated in your contract that this is it, this is it. So to avoid miscommunication or avoid that goes tomorrow. So you have something else.
Yes, I wanted to just add, right, that there's something called leave that you might not necessarily see all the different types of leave, but thankfully the labor law allows for some of which is, I think, the maternity leave.
Yeah.
And there's also something called the paternity leave that people have now said, but the mothers also need someone to support them, even though the men were not the ones that actually put in the baby. They need to be there for the woman and all whatnot. right? And there's been debates that why is it that the man is giving just few days and the man, well, we are not discussing this. But it's important to ask, you can ask questions around the leaves that are tunable, right? Maybe your annual leave. If it's not stated in the contract, then you need to ask for it so that you know the number of days that you're entitled to in a month or in a year rather. And it's so painful, or it's quite awful that some organizations, right, they don't offer you leave until after 12 months of being in employment. And that is actually an awful practice.
What does it say about that?
Well, for once, I don't think I can really.
We'll get back to you on that.
Get back to you on that. But really, I think what it gets, right, is that the person should be able to earn leave even from the first, even before probation, because you are supposed to be able to take some ample. You can split the leave into months. Yeah, you can break it into months to say you accrue your leave. I think that's a better and more reasonable way to portray your leave system or leave structure. But if you just say that the person should go for leave, after completing a 12-month cycle of employment, then I don't think that is best practice. More so, you are not even driving a very positive kind of culture, or a culture that puts you in a life that you are people-centric in your organization. So know the number of days you are entitled to as an employee, to go on leave. So that brings us to the next thing that you should look out for in your contract, right? And what you should look out for is the exit notice.
Yeah.
The notice of wanting to terminate the contract. Actually, what do you have to say about it?
I mean, do they need to give maybe your termination clause says that you have to give 3 months notice, but you can fire you without notice or without notice?
Oh my God, Aisha.
So you need to be clear what the termination clause is. Or is it, do you need to give like notice? Do they need to give you notice? So if anything happens, like maybe they say, oh, you need to go, and they're like, oh, you need to go with immediate effect, and that's if you are being let go, not because of like maybe misconduct or something. Those kind of situations you can let go like without like maybe in cases of like maybe fraud or something, you can let go without giving any notice with immediate effect. Or if you are letting go for any other reason other than that, you have to give the notice that the contract states. Or if they are not giving you notice, they have to pay you in lieu of that. So you need to be clear that, okay, this termination clause, is it clear enough? Do I understand it? If I don't understand it, you need to ask the question. So yeah, that's what I think about that.
Yes, I agree with her. So there is a notice from the employer and there's a notice from the employee. Yeah. Because in some contracts, the employer might give you a different clause, which is not the same as what the employee is expected to do. And that brings me to one experience I had. I remember in one of my previous places of work, right, the employer had what the labor law stated or states as the notice period. So the labor law requires that if you spend 3 months to about 2 years, less than 2 years in an employment, you are supposed to give 1 week notice. But if you spend more than 2 years, right, and less than 5 years, you have to give 2 weeks notice. Anything more than 5 years, you have to give about anything less than 5 years, you have to give about 2 weeks notice, right? So they
more than 5 years.
So more than 5 years, you give 1 month notice. But these people, they wanted a situation whereby you were going to give 2 weeks notice to someone that spent maybe more than 2 years, in the workforce for less than 5 years. You wanted to be able to apply that. Meanwhile, the employee on the other hand, if the person needs to resign, the person was supposed to now give 1 month notice compulsorily, irrespective of the number of days the person, even if it's 1 day, you're required to now give 1 month notice. So I had to stand up to it to say, this is not fair. We have to be able to extend the same level of conservativeness to the employee, because you can't be conservative with the notice period and then you expect, the other person to be very liberal with theirs.
Yes.
So they have to restructure it. What am I driving at? Some people don't really look out for those clauses.
Yeah.
And even the clause on payment review. There are some employers that will tell you that you'll be terminated without cause, or the employer is allowed to terminate your contract without cause. Of course, it's fine if you feel you don't need to have me on board anymore. Terminate, but you have to give me the right notice and pay me in lieu, right? In fact, some organizations are just quite cruel because they won't even put anything like that, right? And I like it when there was one of my previous employment, someone actually corrected the contract I was employing, even though that was it was needed. Because how do you employ someone that is practicing law and should not review the contract? So she reviewed the contract and told me, please add this, please add that. I feel this clause is not going to drive what you really want from the employees and all of that. When I looked at it, I was like, well, she had very good points, right? I had to include that, okay, if peradventure the employer terminates your contract with well, we'll give you the notice, the payment in lieu of notice, if it's an immediate termination, right? And it's also expected from the employee that you give in lieu of notice. Some employers, they'll write the way they will construct that termination clause. You yourself, you might not be able to interpret it, but thank God for AI. Thank God for AI. Ask your AI explain to me like I'm 7. And tell your AI to explain to you so that you would be able to understand what these people are hiding in the clauses of your contract. Everything in the contract is necessary. It's very. But like we said, we're going to highlight just 5 because this 5 things puts people in trouble, and we don't want you to be in trouble.
Exactly. And
what do you have to say?
Yeah, I feel like we've been able to talk about it at length, like determination and everything. Just be sure you understand everything. How long notice do I need to give? How long notice do I need to give? You need to pay me, you can letting me immediately. So all these things are very, very important. And you have to ask if it's not there. And you have to ask that it's put in the contract if it's not clearly stated. Then that drives us to the last, but not the least, number 5. We need to check out for all those restrictive clauses. Those non-competes that they always put. You need to know this very well. Are they telling you that you cannot work in the with another organization until after 3 years that you leave the company? You need to be sure. Because there are some non-competes that are like, oh my gosh.
Well, is it even enforceable? Because I've had situations where I've discussed with legal practitioners and they say these things are not enforceable. They are
non-compete. They're just putting there.
Because maybe for fear, you don't have the right to stop a person from working in another environment. I think what should be in a non-compete is restricting the person from disclosing their information. Exactly. And so if peradventure you investigate and you find out that there was a disclosure, then you can sue the person.
Of course.
But that the person should not work.
It's not how to find
that. You want to actually enforce that to be alone. What if the person does not even put it on social media? What if the person ghosts every social media platform and just decides to want for a competition?
Mm-hmm.
I think we need to start driving. We need to
unnecessary things like in the contract, but it's always still there now. So you still need to pay attention to it because sometimes it's. I've never seen a situation where it was enforced, but it's always usually there. But just not to bite yourself in.
You were working in a legal
behind it, so
Aisha, I've been to some labor, how will I put it? Some labor cases, maybe in court of law. I've been to the courts, and there have been situations whereby we were dealing with labor relations matter. Right? Someone exited the firm, and it was in the non-compete independence clause that the person is not supposed to work in a competition's office.
Mm-hmm.
And although the case dragged for a long time, but it was also very clear after having a conversation with a legal expert that it is not enforceable.
Mm.
It is not enforceable because it is where that law starts. It stops then that it starts with a human rights.
Yeah.
Right? Because so the basic human rights of the person has the rights, for certain things. I think free will, and you are restricting that particular human right.
And human rights always sticks.
It's not because
It's always the top. So you always think it's top. No matter what.
every year.
Yes.
So there's been situations where those things have been argued in courts, but at the end of the day, it still boils down to the fact that you cannot truncate the person's willingness to use someplace else.
Mm-hmm.
So instead, I know there are some jobs that are very high risk.
Mm-hmm.
So when you lose such persons, you just need to have that conversation with the person. You are begging the person. It's not like as if they are trying to force one thing down the person. No, you tell the person that, see, we understand that you have the right to go to any other employer, but please, because the person also wants to maintain a healthy relationship with the organization, right? The person might not now move to a competition. Moving to a competition, many people see it as betrayal, right? And it's true. It's just like, let me bring it to the human betrayal side. But truly, if a person leaves your employment, take for instance the big four, someone leaves one of the big fours and goes to another big four, it causes some form of rifts. Even though it's not meant to be, it just makes it seem like, you might steal our clients and give it to our competition. You might steal our information and give it to competition. And so many things happen. But really, if you build the right relationships with your employees, I believe that all those clauses can be, they would put it into consideration as well as a human being to consider those things and understand why you are truly gunning for them not to go to those places. Rather than you now putting it, people always take the boxes, people. You always feel your righteousness. So never can tell. The person might want to tick the box, accept your offer, but when push comes to shove and you become an employer of no interest, the person will not even consider you anymore. The clauses that you indicated, right? So
I mean, you've heard it, so there's nothing more to say about that. So those are the 5 things that you need to look out for and pay attention to. So, and do you have any last extra tip that we not talk about to round up this conversation?
Well. I'll just say, do your due diligence, right? So even after the contract ticks all the boxes, go and research. Make sure you know about the employer. Let me tell you a story. I remember a senior person at one of the places I used to work before, right? The person was responsible was in the HR team. And then he went to an oil and gas company. And because they were paying him almost triple what he was earning at the time, he baited. And he did not give enough notice because it was good money. This was back then, I can't tell you, because that's how I went to my LinkedIn and got confirmed who was it. But yes, the person went to an oil and gas, and guess what happened afterwards? The oil and gas company was actually sinking. So they could not pay salaries. They paid him his first salary. After that first salary, they could not pay. They could not keep up. Wow. And so that was how he moved from frying pan to fire, and he crashed. And that was how he found himself in one of these other energy companies that you all know, right? And because he was not happy leaving that place, of course, he could not go back to the place where he was coming back. Of course, he didn't give the right reasons. The employer was angry with him. Even though, I don't know why they get angry, because when the person pays, it's not meant to be personal thing, right? It's not meant to be because
you build relationships.
But again, Aisha, we need to be very business minded.
Of course.
You understand? I understand the place where giving a notice so that you can do a proper handover, you can shake hands with the person that is coming in. But it also speaks to your system if you don't have a succession plan in place. Because what if it was not a voluntary exit? What if it was a case of death? What if the person died? Will you be angry with the person for dying?
True.
You will not be angry. So why take it personal? It's not a sentimental, of course. It's a case of you also building your structure so that you are not having too many high risk talents in your workspace. You are having people that even if they paint, you have people to quickly grow up, and they will catch up. So please, let's not get to that point. Because take for instance, now, one of my former places of employment too. I've been saying former place. Not like I'm working with 20 places. But imagine, the guy was a young guy and he works in one of the most important functions of the business. And unfortunately, he passed on. Right? He passed on. And business still has to continue. Will the employer now say that they are angry? That he did not give over. He did not give up notice to me or no.
Sure.
So there are lots of things that play out when it comes to exit. There's the voluntary and involuntary. And you don't know the difference. We've said it. We've talked about it in one of our first episodes. We've talked about it. And we said what the labor law says about exit.
Yes.
So if you've not watched anything from our episodes, go back and watch that one. Right. So, what have we said? 5 things you need to look out for. Number 1, the job description. You need to find out what the job responsibilities are. What will you be doing? So that you will not be giving what you will not order for. The second thing that we spoke about is your compensation breakdown. You need to be able to analyze what they are going to pay you so that it doesn't get to a point whereby what you are negotiated is different from what you are actually documented and what you now finally get an implementation. The third one, we discussed what your work hours should be, and your leave hours, right? The number of days you're entitled to go and leave, during your contract period, during in a year period or duration, right? You ought to see all the parts of your contract. The fourth one has to be the termination clause. You need to ask your employer what are the clauses if they are not there, and tell them to state it so that you know what should be. Don't let them play any form of how will I pretend out having parking with you or trying to guilt trip you into thinking that it's not necessary because you're just doing why you thinking if it's Then the last but not the least, of course, is the non-compete clause, the independent clause in your contracts. Please be careful with all of those clauses so that, again, you are not in cheat. And like we said, rightly, we are not legal experts. Other things you need to look out for in your contract. If you don't look out for those things, unfortunately for you, you might just be getting yourself into what you issue. Exactly.
So, and also, just to wrap up, don't be afraid to ask questions. I think we've already mentioned it. Always, there's nothing like, maybe I'm asking too many questions. You're not being asked that many questions as you want to be sure. Because I mentioned it the other time. Once you sign, you lost your leverage. So it's that time before you sign, you need to ask for everything that you need, what you think, what you don't understand, what you want to be in the contract that is not clearly stated. You need to come to like a middle ground. Both you and the employer need to do something that is mutually beneficial to you. And if something is not clear and you feel like, maybe it's not beneficial to you, you can always ask questions and be sure that this is what you're getting, exactly what you want to get.
Yes. So we've come to the end of today's session. From one explorer to the other, be bold,
be global,
and be you.